Good morning, everyone, and a huge welcome from a very windy Cape Town. It's great to see a good, strong turnout in terms of registrations for this conversation. And I think the level of interest tells us something in itself, that AI and digital transformation have moved firmly into the strategic agenda for South Africa's GBS sector. Thanks for joining BPO, Harambee, and the Bridgespan group. My name is Keith Rosmarin, who, for those people who don't know me, and I lead BPO's skills portfolio. We've deliberately designed this morning to be more than a presentation of research. We want to hear the sector as well, what clients are asking for, what you are seeing in your operations, how quickly AI-enabled delivery is moving, and what this is beginning to mean for roles, skills, and workforce pathways. We have a great team with us this morning. Tracy Swart from Harambee will bring the youth employment perspective. Rosina Naidu from the Bridgespan group will take us through the research and facilitate our industry pulse checks. And Neville Cousins from BPO, who I know everybody knows, will later help us reflect on what these signals mean for the sector and our competitiveness. I'd also like to express my gratitude to Victoria John from Harambee, who has led the research project. Chanel, I know, will be in the background helping with supporting the engagements and chats. And we do really want this to be interactive. And you'll have three ways to contribute, of course, via the Zoom chat. Please share example, insights, reactions, and signals you're seeing in your own organizations or in the sector. Second, Rosina will facilitate a series of Mentimeter pulse checks for those individuals. Hopefully, you should have Mentimeter on your as one of your apps, and you'll be asked to contribute. And we'll be looking at changes in demand, where organizations are in their AI and digital adoption journey, and the impact, of course, on skills and capabilities. And third, of course, we'll create some space for questions and discussion as we work through the session. So please don't wait until the last 5 minutes to engage. The value today is as much in what we learn from all of you as it is what we present. That being said, BPO will host ongoing opportunities for the sector to engage insights, challenges, solutions, as we look forward to these important data-led conversations. So with that, let me spend a few minutes on why I believe this conversation matters strategically for our sector. From a BPO perspective, this is no longer simply a technology conversation. It's increasingly a conversation about client demand, competitiveness, operating models, and workforce design and skills. The question is not only what can AI automate, the bigger question is what work will the market and our client require from South Africa 3, 5, 10 years from now? And will we have the people, capabilities, and delivery models to win that work? We're going to continue to see headlines, and I believe another one has hit our headlines today about automation and job losses. Some of those impacts are real, and we shouldn't minimize them. But the danger is that we respond to individual announcements with a knee-jerk narrative that AI equals job destruction without looking at the wider transformation and the opportunity taking place. At the same time that routine work is being automated, we're seeing organizations redesign campaigns, introduce AI-enabled delivery, and create demand for more complex work requiring stronger digital capability, judgment, analytics, domain expertise, customer intelligence, and of course, human oversight. These stories are often much less visible in the headline. So for me, the issue is less jobs versus AI and more how is work changing and how are we preparing quickly enough? And this matters enormously for our competitiveness. The Bridgespan research reinforces that these remain genuine differentiators. In other words, we shouldn't be choosing between technology and our human advantage, but the opportunity is to combine them. Rosina will take us through the scenarios in more detail. BPO's role is not only to host conversations about AI. One of our responsibilities is to provide the sector with increasingly robust skills intelligence, what work is changing, what roles are growing, which are being redesigned, what capabilities employers need, increasingly how many people are required at entry, intermediate, and advanced levels. And those are some of the areas that I'm leading. And we're building this through the implementation of the skills strategy. Many of you who were involved deeply in helping us to construct that. And the next layer will be increasingly quantitative, going back to employers to understand current and forecast demand for digital ICT, technology, and AI-enabled roles and skills associated with them. Because ultimately, intelligence is only useful if it helps us make better decisions about talent pipelines, training, reskilling, investment, and market positioning. So perhaps the question I would leave us for this introduction as we start the morning is, can we move our workforce and our skills ecosystem fast enough to ensure that AI opens pathways into more valuable work rather than narrowing access to it? And critically, can we do that in a way that strengthens South Africa's competitiveness and helps us continue to attract investment and create jobs? And of course, competitiveness only matters if that opportunity translates into real pathways for people, particularly young South Africans entering the labor market. And that's where our partnership with Harambee is so important. Tracy, let me hand across to you to frame why this conversation matters, especially from a youth employment perspective. Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks so much, Keith. And yeah, a huge welcome to everybody that's joined the call this morning. I think for anybody who's engaged with me previously, knows that I work very closely with the global business services and digital sector from a Harambee perspective. Clearly, our partnership with BPO and the DTRC and the underpin of the work that's required in the master plan to achieve very audacious jobs in job creation and up until 2030. This work is critical for us, and the GBS sector has been the biggest contributor to youth employment, certainly over the last 4 or 5 years, and we really want that to continue. I think that's part of the reason why we've co-invested with BPO in undertaking this research, and why these type of conversations, are critical to making sure that young people are given the opportunity, are elevated in their skills, that we understand what the market needs in terms of skilling and a diagnostic for young people joining the sector, and that we stay on top of that and make sure that going forward we support BPO in the implementation of the skills strategy, which is encompassing, what the sourcing and matching needs are. So really, as I say, a huge thank you to Rosina for undertaking the research and the work that Bridgespan have done, and to BPO for bringing this important conversation into the fold. With that, I will hand over to Rosina.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Hi, everyone. Great to be here today. Now we're going to take you through some of the key insights from our research conducted last year. So last year, Harambee and Bridgespan partnered to understand how AI could really reshape employment opportunities for women and youth in the BPO sector. And so we asked two main questions. One was, how might AI really reshape jobs and entry-level pathways in the sector? And two, what would it take to ensure that women and youth can access the opportunities that emerge? And the reason, of course, we focused on these questions is because women and youth have played such critical roles in the sector to date, and we wanted to make sure that they could continue to do that as the sector really changes and the jobs actually change. We approached this work in three main ways. First, we conducted secondary research and did a sector analysis. We also did scenario development and modeling, and we'll get into what we thought the most plausible futures looked like. And third was speaking with a number of experts across the sector and using that to really gather more data and pressure test our findings. And so specifically, we heard from a number of BPO operators and experts, technology organizations very much focused on AI, government stakeholders, as well as academia and youth skilling organizations. Another thing to note was that this research was conducted from June to November 2025. So we really wanted to use today to share what we found in that research and then reflect on how things might be changing right now and what the next steps could be for the sector. The research really surfaced three key insights around AI, jobs, and the actual sector. First was that AI adoption was real, but it was also uneven. And so we saw that the large multinational BPOs were moving a lot faster in terms of AI adoption and the complexity of their use cases, while the local providers were much earlier in their AI adoption journey. And so for the multinationals, we saw use cases linked to agent assist chatbots, workflow automation, QA tools, and generally it was just more embedded in the work. Local providers were more at the piloting stage and really starting to think about the best use cases and testing those out, which did include some chatbots, thinking about ChatGPT pilots, as well as using rule-based tools as well. Second was that AI was changing work more than eliminating it. When we began the research, I think this was a general fear or the main kind of narrative that AI was going to replace the jobs. And I think what we found was this is really not true, or at least wasn't at the time, where we saw that augmentation was happening versus replacement. So AI was starting to handle the more repetitive, routine tasks, while humans still remained very important for judgment, empathy, contextual understanding. And so using them together is really where the power really came out. Third was that South Africa still had a distinctive advantage. And so we looked across a couple of different markets and we saw that AI was being used in different ways depending on how that market really was able to adopt AI, but also based on their general value proposition. And we saw that for South Africa, there was really an opportunity here where we were really known for complex, empathy-led customer experience, especially in trust-intensive and regulated sectors. And so, for example, in utilities, insurance, healthcare, those kinds of sectors. And so we really saw that there was a lot more optimism and opportunity, and it was more about the choices that we make now. We wanted to understand how to think about the future. What were the main drivers that would cause changes in employment? And so the first one was, of course, AI capability advancements. So really the breakthroughs or stagnations in AI capabilities and understanding how sophisticated, autonomous, and also how reliable the technology will become. Second was around global demand. And here we wanted to consider both the fact that we need to understand what competitors are doing and how they are changing their services and value propositions, and generally what customers were demanding. And this, of course, would really change the way our sector kind of changes and the way roles actually develop over the long term. Third was level of AI adoption. So, of course, how BPOs actually then embed AI into the work and make those investments. And fourth was about the enabling environment. So the skills, the infrastructure, the policy, the investment around AI. And with these four, we felt pretty confident that AI will change, continue to advance, but what was more uncertain was around how quickly and how effectively South Africa would actually adopt AI, and also how demand trends might change. And so considering that these were the main uncertainties, we developed two main scenarios where we thought the future could plausibly end up. And so on the left, we have AI accelerated growth, and on the right, we have fragmented AI growth. And so the first one is really characterized by a lot more investment and preparation. And so in this scenario, we see AI augmenting human delivery at scale. We see South Africa really responding to changing client demand. And that means using AI alongside humans. We also see that complex empathy-led customer experience remains our differentiation. And we see that entry-level workers have pathways into these new hybrid and higher value roles. And so in this scenario, if we think about today's customer service agent maybe handling simple balance queries all the way to more complicated disputed insurance claims. In this model, we see that AI would be handling or supporting the simple queries, surfacing customer history, relevant information, really helping with decision making. And then the AI would support that decision making. The humans would then rely on their judgment, empathy, and problem solving to solve the more complex queries. For fragmented AI growth, this is where we see competitors and clients moving faster. So for example, competitors really investing in AI, automating a lot more, changing their service delivery. And then we also see clients maybe building capabilities in-house now that they have access to AI as well. We see that demand for SA's services becomes a lot more fragmented. The routine and entry-level roles face a lot more pressure. And so there are remaining opportunities, but they would skew more towards higher value roles that are a lot harder to access. And so what we see with these two scenarios is that AI is going to evolve. And so it doesn't necessarily determine the future we get, but our choices do. So it's really about how we invest and prepare. And so after we created these scenarios, we then wanted to model what this could look like in terms of the job landscape. And so this graph really shows the total number of jobs in thousands over the years. And so it's important to note that these are estimations, very much focused on our different scenarios. And so the gray line represents the baseline, and it uses our baseline growth to really estimate these figures. And we see that without significant AI impact, we would probably get to around 350,000 jobs by 2035. The green lines represent this AI accelerated growth. And the reason there are two is because we wanted to understand what the range could really look like. And what's more important in this graph is looking at the shape versus the specific numbers, but really looking at the trajectory for the scenario, where we end up with around 450 to 510,000 jobs. And again, this is really the scenario where we are investing, preparing, and really supporting our workforce to really transition to these new jobs. The pink or purple lines represent the fragmented AI growth. And again, this is more of a reactive kind of scenario where competitors and clients are moving very fast with AI, and our kind of landscape becomes a lot more fragmented, and what we are able to deliver and what customers want becomes a lot more higher value. And so generally there's still growth, but it's a lot more flat. And again, there's a range here where we end up at around 250 to 290,000 jobs. And so what we see here is that, again, it's very much about choice. And so when we think about moving towards this more positive trajectory, we see three main things that come up. The first is the importance to redesign work around humans and AI. So instead of simply automating jobs, we are redesigning roles that value both sides. So using the complex judgment, problem solving, and oversight from humans, as well as AI's ability to handle these more routine and repetitive tasks, and combining that to make sure that the roles are very clear and people understand how to actually access them. Second is then to actually build the pathways into this new work. And this requires looking at this from two angles. One is reskilling and upskilling existing workers to make sure that they can then succeed in these roles. But then it's also about redesigning entry-level pathways, because we know that the skills are now looking quite different, where we need a combination of digital, technical, and human capabilities. And the last one is to really lean into South Africa's distinctive value proposition. So like I mentioned, we looked at various different competitor markets. And we saw that in some places, automation is happening a lot quicker, and the focus of AI might be different, for example, for complex analytics. But we see that for South Africa, we have a very distinctive value proposition, and the key is to actually build on this versus significantly shift it. So it's about using AI to strengthen rather erode this specific advantage in complex, empathy-led, and culturally aligned customer experience. And again, thinking about these specific domains where this is specifically valuable. And so this is broadly what we found in the research, and we will also be sending some insights from the research after this session. But we wanted to make the point that this is what we saw last year, and we do want to understand how things might be changing now. And so now we'll move on to a pulse check, which will be interactive, where you can answer various questions that are very much focused on those drivers that we spoke about earlier. So as we mentioned, this is going to be on Menti. And so all you need to do is scan this QR code. You could also go to the site and enter this code, and then you will join the series of polls. So I'm just going to give this a few seconds as participants join. I see we're over 20 people. So I think I'll move on to the next slide, which is the first question. But you can also continue to join using the QR code on the right. So the first question is around the changes that you're seeing most strongly in client demand today. So are you seeing explicit demand for AI use? Is it more about general productivity and efficiency? Is there still an emphasis on complex, higher value services? Are customers asking for data analytics? Interesting. So it seems like we're seeing a lot of demand for stronger data analytics or insight capability, explicit demand for AI-enabled delivery, and still human oversight and complex customer experience. Great. I think so. There's a strong push for stronger data analytics or insight capability. Does anyone want to put their hand off and put their hand up and maybe comment on a bit more about like what you're hearing from clients?
This is your opportunity not to be shy. So please jump in. For a number of you that I know that can, do you have some insights? So please put up your hand, or otherwise, provide some commentary in the chat as well. Otherwise, we'll continue to track through, Rosina, and at the end of the pulse checks, we'll allow individuals an opportunity to provide some input.
Great. Well, I think this is still in line very much with what we found, where human oversight is still very critical, but we are seeing a need for greater efficiency with AI. I think it's interesting that clients are explicitly asking for AI-enabled services, and also that there's this need for stronger analytics. So would love to hear more about that. But we can also, of course, comment at the end of these polls as well. Cool. So moving on to the next question, oh, sorry, we actually do have a hand. Justin, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think Natasha, if you could just give Justin a bit to talk. Thank you.
Sure thing. Just give me 1 second. Justin, I'm coming for you.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Perfectly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Justin.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Justin here from Merchants. I think from our experience, what we've seen in presenting AI and just doing discovery sessions with our clients is that I think the expectation on their end, especially with regards to insights and analytics, is to number one, shorten the time frame from which reports are produced when those analytics are starting to produce results that actually drive business decisions. So I think the want or the ask from what we're seeing from clients is a much quicker turnaround time in getting those analytics to make sense to help enable better business decisions. It's just one of the things that we've seen.
I appreciate that feedback, Justin. Thanks very much. Useful, as you said, to see how AI, well, the expectations is to just optimize the processes and outcomes and throughput. Please, others, add in to that if you'd like to. So just put up your hand. We'll just track through those. But if we're not seeing any others, then I think we'll give you an opportunity to respond to all the questions as well. So please go ahead, Rosina.
Great. Thanks, Justin. That's super helpful just to make this a bit more practical and hear real examples as well. So it would really invite more participation. Moving on to the next one, it's really about where your organization is today in terms of adopting AI-enabled delivery. So would you say you're more exploring use cases, piloting, starting to scale selected workflows? Are you embedding it across multiple service lines? Or has it become really central to your delivery proposition? And this is really interesting to just see the range. At the same time, maybe not surprising. And I think it would be great to hear from participants maybe who are maybe exploring use cases and then others where it's really become embedded at scale. Does anyone want to share maybe some of the use cases that you are exploring? Justin.
Hi guys. So just a comment around that, right? We're kind of got two steps that we're looking at. One is the use case exploration, and then there's definitely be some instances where we've identified actual areas where we can start implementing, which we've done. But I think it's really important to understand that the big AI companies themselves, outside of that also would include people like Microsoft, they've identified the gap in that AI has got so much capability, and the missing piece in the center is how do we actually apply it to business workflows. And so what they've done is, and I think Palantir kind of originated this in the early 2000s, where they sent out engineers into organizations to better understand those business processes. And once they understood the business processes, they were able to then map it back and say, this is where automation becomes a a perfectly good use case, etc. So that's currently what's happening in the industry. I think Microsoft has deployed about 6,000, Anthropic 1,000, OpenAI 1,000. So the big AI companies have identified the need, and so this is currently where they're busy. And I think so for most of us, exploring use cases should kind of fundamentally be where a lot of our focus is now. We don't have to have an explicit kind of a fit just yet, but I think delving deeper into our client workflows and understanding those processes and looking for those fits is going to get us the quickest wins to actually finding a solution that fits a specific use case.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, interested to hear any other thoughts from others that are participating. So please just lean in and share your thoughts as well. Yeah, thanks, Rosina, for taking the really interesting, I think, results coming through with more exploration rather than, I guess, implementation. And also interesting to see the data tracking through globally on for those organizations that have executed and implemented AI. Only a very small proportion are seeing the return on investment from the AI implementation, and I'm sure Neville will share more information on that when he comes on as well. Thanks, Rosina. Please go ahead.
Great. And move on to the next one. So which capabilities are you seeing become more important? Is it AI and digital fluency, data analytical capability, complex problem solving? Is it more about communication, empathy, and customer understanding, domain expertise, AI governance, compliance, leadership, change capability? Looks like we're seeing a lot in AI and digital fluency, data and analytical capability, and AI governance, cyber risk, and compliance. Does anyone want to talk a little bit more about maybe what like digital fluency looks like in your organization, how you're thinking about it, maybe about governance? I think that's also a very important topic to touch on.
One thing that we're seeing, Rosina, is that more recently we partnered with Microsoft Elevate, and I think Tiara was on early on to share Microsoft certification vouchers with the sector that we were gifted by Microsoft, and we had an excellent take up from the sector with over 2,000 individual organizations committing to taking their incumbent staff and allowing them having access to these AI certificates. And we're tracking through that currently and seeing a really good response and really showcasing a need to develop the foundational AI competencies for the sector. But I'd be interested to hear from others as well, either in the chat or just perhaps come in and provide your insights on what you're seeing and what the need and what your needs are. Perhaps even on a personal basis, be interested to hear your own personal journey.
Keith, just touching on, encouraging individuals to share their personal journey. I see Sipo has posted that he posted a link and says that AI, help founders to find grants, loans, capitals, etc. So I'm just wondering if people would be brave enough to come on and share that with us.
Thanks very much, Chanel. Sipho, would you like to come and perhaps expand on that?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, of course. Great. Go for it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So yeah, in the chat, I shared that app, foundercircle.com, is a South African app. And to my knowledge, it uses AI in the back end to sort of bring together all forms of alternative capital. So you can find grants, accelerators, competitions, and so forth on the app. It's live on the App Store and on Google Play Store.
I appreciate that. And I think that's one thing that BPS is also wanting to do through its Skills Intelligence Hub is to provide information around tools and aspects that can actually help the sector. And so I think receiving that information and input and ideas, I think, is something that we are always looking for. So appreciate you providing that as well, Steve. Appreciate that. Any other input, Rosina, or from the delegates attending? Just wanted to see if there's anything else in the chat, but otherwise.
Keith, there's a chat from Rudy in the chat, and Rudy says, there is a need to review security barriers within compliant environments to allow access to AI literacy upskilling. When adopting AI, we need to look at its accessibility in our environments. And that's from Rudy Jansen.
Appreciate it, Rudy. Would you like to perhaps also again come on and just share more information around that? But I understand that cybersecurity regulations and in some cases customer constraints where we're delivering campaigns makes it quite difficult to access that. So yes, I fully understand. I think what you're pointing to, and I think it's a real sort of a real need. Rudy, please come on if you'd like to, but otherwise, yeah, I think anybody else in the team who would like to respond to that.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. So just our lived experience, and we partook in the BPESA AI Microsoft certification, and we didn't have a large amount of vouchers distributed to us. So I just think, and we did have some issues around accessibility, bypassing certain security measures in our live environment. So at scale, from where I was sitting, there is a challenge if you wanted to roll something like that out at scale. The barriers to entry to access that would be really, really difficult. Now, we were able to do that because we didn't do a lot of these certifications, but I think there's a real challenge because we all appreciate the need for AI literacy upskilling training, but getting access to that in our environments. I'm not sure how we tackle that. Do we do that individually? You know, we needed to ring fence our employees who did those examinations for a certain period of time and really have open access to platforms.
Thanks, Rudy. I appreciate that feedback, and I think you haven't been unique. I think in that feedback either. I think it's an area that I think we as BPESA also want to engage with to make sure that we can make these opportunities more accessible. And I think what we are intending to do, I think, is just pulling together a think tank and to also start to think about how we deploy these types of programs into the future. Certainly mobile access and data-free access is also important, or at least subsidies that we can provide to allow agents and incumbent staff to access training and development after hours, but that's not, as you say, necessarily sustainable. And one's also trying to create the situation where development and upskilling can also take place within the workplace as well. Appreciate that. Thanks. Justin, thanks. I see you've got your hand up too. Thank you for jumping in again.
Thanks, everybody. I think this is just for anybody who is interested. And I think there's way too much information out in the market, right? But Anthropic has an academy that does free certifications on things like AI fluency. So for anybody really that wants to get a better understanding, I think from the fluency side, I would suggest that maybe you just go to the academy, sign up. It is free. You can do a number of certs for free there and start getting a better understanding. And OpenAI has the same. And I think that will be a good starting point to kind of drown out the noise. But it does lay the fundamentals of what they're trying to communicate across without getting too, heavily involved in the engineering side of things. But I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Absolutely. And I think what we'll also be doing more of, I think, is providing a curated resource list that we can actually make available to organizations to take advantage of. And as you said, a number of the large enterprises are providing many of these programs at no cost. But still, I think the point that was raised is around access to work through the compliance and security issues, particularly around cybersecurity, is also an important element that we've got to work together through as a sector and solution around, frankly. So appreciate, I think, us raising these as key issues and potentially even constraints to helping us to scale the outcomes that we want to achieve. Just checking if there are any other sort of hands and thoughts just from the different pulse checks that we have undertaken. And of course, we as BPSA will continue to deep dive into the data and provide some surveys around a number of these areas on an ongoing basis because things are moving so quickly. We can't wait year on year to address and get these types of insights and data points. So much appreciated. Rosina, are there any sort of closing points and aspects that you'd like to make before we sort of move on to the next component?
Yeah, I think the last thing was just to talk about the priorities that feel most urgent in your organization. So I think we've started to hear about skilling and some of the challenges there and making that more accessible. But would be curious to know about, like redesigning the pathways, developing team leaders, if there's a need to recruit technical specialists, any of these like internal academies. I think what's also interesting is like the interconnectedness of the skilling component and redesigning of the pathways and the actual jobs. So would love to hear if there's any perspectives on that and how they can really move in parallel. And this is a really helpful picture to see where the priorities are, like very much in skilling. But yeah, again, like curious about as we think about new entrants, how are companies really thinking about that?
I think clearly, Rosina, yeah, good to see that there's a massive weighting towards reskilling, upskilling, future skilling employees for higher sort of value roles. And I think that just lets us know at which phase we're at. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot more work around work redesign processes and, of course, automation and humans in the loop as time goes by. But really appreciate, I think, you running the pulse checks. From a Bepesa perspective, this is something that we want to continue with. Please send us additional thoughts, everyone, around some of these key questions as we sort of move forward. But perhaps, Rosina, thank you for running these pulse checks just to get some real-time data and engagement from our sector. I think it's so important that research plays a key part and a key role, but so too does where are things in the moment and what are our perceptions, both qualitative and quantitative. So thank you so much, Rosina, for that. Perhaps just moving on, if I may, then into the next section. Neville, I'd like to hand across to yourself just for input, particularly in terms of the impact and what this means for the sector and the role that Bepesa will play. Thanks, Neville. Over to you.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you, Rosina. That was quite insightful. I think it's going to be important that we continue to do this research because, as I always tell, everyone that I speak to, is AI is moving so quickly and so fast that we don't really know what the impact is going to be. It's something that we're going to have to go through together. We're going to have to experience, and we're going to have to adapt very quickly. So we've just seen Rosina's presentation. I'm just going to focus on two areas that come out of that report, and those are the two extremes. The 450,000 to 510,000 jobs in the one scenario, if we get it right, and then the 250,000 to 290,000 in the other case, if we just, as we say, we just drift along and take things as they come. Which I don't expect this sector to do, but nonetheless, let's just look into those. So these are two entirely different futures for the industry, and the gap between them is not going to be closed by technology. I mean, it will, but that's not going to make the biggest difference. The main thing is going to be the choices that we make in the sector, the people in this session right now, and the rest of the people in the sector. What are those decisions that we are going to make? And that's going to determine the outcome that we see. Now, a couple of outcomes. Firstly, the point I want to make is that the differentiators that Bridgespan named are real, but they're not permanent. So we heard things like empathy-led customer experience, cultural alignment, English proficiency, our footprint in regulated sectors, and these are genuine advantages today, and they will not defend themselves. These are things that are going to be under pressure, and every one of them has to be actively invested in, or a lower cost, more automated competitor will erode it from beneath us, and that's very clear. So the research is effectively telling us you have to lead, and leads get lost through inaction, not through being incompetent on day one. So we have to keep what we've got to grow it, we've got to develop it. The second thing I want to make a point on is that is this idea of reskilling. I think I was just surprised to see how high they've actually rated, which is a good thing, expected, but I would have expected to see some of the others as well. But when we talk about reskilling and upskilling, I think we need to be careful that it's not a mitigation of the fear that we have of what lies ahead. In other words, something we do to soften job losses. I think Bridgespan is framing this differently, and I think it's the right one, that reskilling is a growth strategy. And the 450,000 plus scenario doesn't happen without a workforce that can operate hybrid AI augmented roles in regulated high trust environment. That's not remedial training. That's the product we're trying to sell to global clients. And if we keep funding reskill or reskilling and upskilling like it's a cost center, then we'll get the cost center outcome, which is the smaller and the less inclusive scenario on the lower side. And that inclusivity point deserves more weight than it usually gets. Now, both scenarios that Bridgespan modeled show the same pattern. Without deliberate design, then women and youth are the first excluded from the higher value hybrid roles that AI creates. And that's not a side effect that we manage after the fact. If our reskilling and access programs are built for inclusion from day one, then we hit the AI accelerated jobs number and still miss the outcome that actually matters for this country. So I think it's important that we get the focus right and that we behave proactively and not defensively. Then on the third point that I want to make is that the Bridgespan flagged as things to monitor, which is client sentiment on AI in complex CX, and whether smaller local BPOs are actually investing. I'd go further than monitor. I think BPSA should be tracking those two things formally, publicly, and a cadence, because they're the earliest warning we'll get about which scenario we're actually heading towards. So having insight into what's happening and how we are tracking on this I think is going to be important so that we can intervene and that we can create the necessary actions in order to ensure we get to that upside. So my read here on the strategic posture that this demands is that we don't compete on price. We were never going to win that fight. I think we all realize that. And trying to will only, I'd say if we compete on trust, complexity, and human judgment in regulated environments, and we back that positioning in real investment in AI and human hybrid delivery, then we're not just adopting AI for its own sake, we're actually being strategic about it. Now, I'll close with the World Economic Forum report that came out, where it also emphasized that in the next 5 years, there'll be 170 million new jobs by 2030. And then in that same period, there'll be 92 million displaced. It's a net gain, but a churn touching over a fifth of the world's formal employment. And I think the point here is that we need to be focusing on the new jobs. We need to be focusing on the upside. And we need to be understanding that job losses is actually an opportunity for growth into those new roles that exist. So to finally close out, I want to be clear that this isn't a theoretic. This is not theoretical for us. We've got to be actively engaged, and so BPSA is actively in promoting the shift towards AI-based skills and services within the sector right now. We're not waiting for 2030 or 2035 to arrive before we build the capability. And that means pushing our members and our talent pipeline toward agent-oriented roles, people who can design, supervise, and quality check AI agents handling customer interactions, not just execute scripted processes alongside them. So if the future of the industry is hybrid human AI delivery, then we'd rather be early and with a skill set that's able to react and act early and not find ourselves lagging behind. So it is about the humans, but we need to be understanding that AI is going to play a massive role. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Tracy, and then you can close us out, you and Keith. Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Neville. And yeah, thanks to Rosina, Keith, and everybody that contributed to this conversation. I think it's definitely going to be the first of many. And certainly from a Harambee perspective, the impact on young people is being closely watched. And it's something that we want to stay close to understand just what the needs are of the sector and how we can continue to support making sure that young people are ready for the work that is available. It's no doubt that empathy will continue to play a role. It's no doubt that human oversight into anything that's created by by AI, is still required. And so I'm thinking, we have to actually work out, just how and where all of that fits together. And I think it's going to take this broader ecosystem to really be a little bit more open to sharing and to engaging on this topic. We do know that there's enough space for everybody in the GBS sector. And I think that this is just one of the things where it would be really good to have a collaborative approach and to share what's working and what isn't. But thank you to everybody for their participation. And yeah, look forward to the next conversations around AI and its impact on global business services.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Much appreciated. I think we value our partnership with Harambee and also through many organizations that help to fund a number of initiatives like MasterCard and others. So really appreciate that. I think for me, what today reinforces is that we shouldn't treat this as a once-off conversation or a once-off piece of research. I know that a number of people would love to be able to provide some contribution, but AI is moving too quickly for us to have these ad hoc research initiatives. We need to continually refresh our view on what clients are demanding and what they want, what the adoption of AI is like, what the roles, capabilities, and workforce transition is in what we're experiencing, and use that intelligence to help the sector make decisions. And that's one of the roles that we want Bepesa to play. Individual organizations have incredibly valuable intelligence, but no single employer sees the entire market. And we believe that Bepesa can provide value by aggregating, consolidating these signals across the sector, of course, protecting commercially sensitive information, IP, and similar, and turning fragmented employer input into intelligence that the sector can use collectively. And that really has been the strength of our sector, particularly when we've had disruption, like during COVID, where our sector is able to come together and provide information, but also solutions to support the bigger ambition, and particularly to make sure that we're a competitive sector and to attract investment. So I think from a practical call to action, some asks from our side, share those signals, tell us what you're seeing, what clients are asking for, where AI is moving from from pilot to scale delivery, what roles are changing, what skills are becoming more difficult to find, which talent pipelines are breaking down. Share data when it's feasible, and especially when Bepesa comes back to the sector with the next skills demand survey, which we will be administering shortly. We want to move beyond saying that AI, data, or digital skills are important. We want to quantify which roles, how many people, which regions, what level, requiring which capabilities over what time frame, that enables us to build that into our skills strategy and to execute against that collectively. We also want you to share the pain points. What are some of the barriers? The technology adoption constraints, the ones we mentioned earlier on around access to some of the training programs, the curriculum gaps, and regulatory or even data-related issues. We also want to hear the case studies and success stories, and move beyond the knee-jerk, what we see in the news feeds on a daily basis. And we also appreciate you, I think, staying engaged. We intend to create regular opportunities like this, pulse checks. Thank you so much, Rosina. Research engagements, employer working sessions, of course, skill surveys, and case study forums, so that the intelligence remains current as the technology evolves. So I think from our perspective, the closing comment really is, let's make sure that we shape the future rather than simply react it. And I really just want to appreciate everybody joining for today's session, listening to the research, and we look forward to the next sessions taking place. And with that, everybody, thanks very much indeed, and have a wonderful day further. Thank you.